Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm Gamby with my co-host Brandon, and yes, it is Saturday. This episode usually comes out on Fridays, but I messed up the audio yesterday. We recorded something in the morning. I went to edit it, and I pretty much destroyed it, and I wasn't able to recover it. So I am sustainably low at the moment, but I'm making up for that by re-recording this episode with Brandon. So this is still hopefully helpful. We won't be able to give you advice for Friday. But the good thing is there's still things to take advantage of for Sunday. So we'll give you a few players to take advantage of for Sunday. But first, as always, let's start with our 10 takes for the week on this weekend. And I'll start with my first one, which is just a reminder that next week's schedule is atrocious. It's awful. But the most important thing to note about next week, and this is why we advocate using our off nights tool, is because the off nights are not your usual ones. Normally, Monday, Wednesday is the off nights. But in this situation, Tuesday and Thursday are off nights. So it's really important to get those off nights right. Most sites almost always use Monday, Wednesday as like a default for off nights. But in this next week, that's not the case. And in a week this bad, you're going to really want to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, definitely. The schedule starts to normalize a little bit after next week, but then, holidays are coming. It's going to be weird again. But next week is another just bizarre schedule. All right, let's address the elephant in the room. Babcock has been fired.
Adios, sir.
Sheldon Keefe took over, won his first game against a hard-to-score-on Arizona Coyotes. Although, I don't know. That game was won in the way that you beat the Coyotes. You score just a couple goals, and you stop them from scoring on you. Because you're not blowing out the Coyotes.
Yep, so. Exactly. They did have better shot opportunities. Like, if you look at where the shots came from, they were way more dangerous than under Babcock. But still, it's too early to say. They did give Sheldon Keefe the first star of the game, which I thought was a little weird.
That's weird.
I think it's weird on your first game. I don't know. I get it. I think the hype for Sheldon Keefe right now is insane. It almost reminds me of, like, Pep Guardiola levels in soccer. Like, people are going crazy over Sheldon Keefe. But then again, it's Toronto. I mean,
yeah, I it reminds me of everything that's ever happened in Toronto to start.
I think you could put a head of lettuce on defense and people would get stoked and call him the next Gretzky.
Yeah, pretty much. So as far as implications, the first thing I'm sure everybody has noticed is that Tyson Barrie is top power play. That's fun for now, but I would not really advise going out after him unless you can get him for either free or cheap. And by cheap, I mean like trading your worst player, somebody that you're going to stream out anyway. Because as soon as Marner comes back, I expect Barrie will be the one that gets knocked off that top line, that top power play. So, I mean, that's what I would expect. I'm not the coach, but that's what makes sense to me. Keefe likes to basically play his best players as much as possible, which is why he bumped out Johnsson for Barrie. Just play them as much as he can on the power play. But I do think that he's going to want Marner and Nylander both on the top power play and shift Barrie down a little bit. So don't think this is going to be a long-term uptick in production from Barrie. I don't really expect that.
My big takeaway from all of that was that you are not, in fact, coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
No. Nope.
Yeah, so that is confirmed now, folks. If you had any doubts, Brandon is not head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. My next take is going to be a shout-out to Evgeny Malkin. I mean, when he's healthy, I think it's extremely hard to compete with him. I mean, maybe Evander Kane can touch like how much of a multi-cat monster he is and on all fronts with power play and goals, assists, hits, pims. The dude is a monster. Actually, I should say he hasn't actually been hitting as much this season.
He never really hits. Shooting. He's like a half a hit a game guy. If you want hits, you go Crosby, weirdly enough.
True. I know, it's weird, huh? But Malkin is just a monster when healthy. And I know there were a lot of questions about him this year. He got taken in the third round in a lot of leagues that we were watching and stuff, which was crazy.
In our leagues, third round too.
Yeah, and we were really surprised about Malkin falling that far. But he when healthy again, he's been worth so far all the injury struggles at the beginning. I know I'll probably take this back when playoff season comes and be like, I hate you, Malkin. I can't believe you're out. But for right now, I really love Malkin.
Yeah, he's good as long as he's not injured through playoffs and you make playoffs. Okay, next up, the Islanders are on a 16-game point streak, the longest in franchise history, beating out even their 80s counterparts, which is just insane. You don't hate it. I guess you could.
I mean, like,
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
It's
Actually,
2
though,
years
I would
running
say,
that these guys have defied all expectations and like statistics.
to be fair, I think they actually make more sense this year than they did last year. At least this year, offensively, they're getting it done. Last year, it was insane because they couldn't get anything done offensively, and yet they were winning everything. This year, at
Yeah.
least, there's some games. There's a little bit more, I guess. There's a little bit more fluctuation in net, for example. Like, they can take 4 goals against and still win a game. I don't see
Yeah,
that
I mean they've got
happening
elite
last year.
winger Derek Brassard now, and
Yeah.
elite center Brock Nelson,
And they've
and
got
elite winger Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, I can't wait till they make Michael Dal Cole elite. Nah, no one can do that.
he's gonna be deep red in the Corsica ratings forever on Daily Face-Off.
Oh, one of the most overhyped prospects in a while.
Yeah, but at
You know-
least they're finally scratching Leo Komarov on that team.
I mean, that should have happened like years ago on any
Shouldn't
team.
have- Yeah, I don't know. It was why he was signed for whatever. Too much of a diversion now. Ryan
I will
Pulock's
say-
top power play, guys. Yay.
Trotz is probably yet again the favorite for best coach of the league so far. This is insane. Speaking of just weird things happening, the Florida Panthers continue to come back. It seems a trend for them now where at the beginning of the game, they decide, you know what, guys? We suck. We're a bad hockey team. Let's let in a few goals. Yeah? Well, let's just let in a few goals. They go to the second period. It's back and forth. They go into the locker room. They come back out for the third, and they say, you know what, guys? We're a good hockey team now. We can score goals. Bob, you're going to be elite. And you know what? Barkov and Huberto, you're going to go score a lot of goals. And they just do that, and then they come back. It's I don't know who the Panthers are. You never, like, it's not even a game-to-game thing. It's literally like a period-to-period thing. I have no clue who the Panthers are. And
Yeah.
I'm curious what's going to happen because I feel like the Panthers can go one of two ways. I think I can die. They can go they can go one of two ways. One direction is they can figure out their defensive woes and continue to crush offensively. Right? They can do that, I think, and become a really elite, scary team and one of the best, I'd say, in the East. Or they can go the other way where their offense falls off a cliff and actually normalizes, and instead they just continue their defensive woes and just tumble down the standings. I feel like that's the only two paths for the Panthers at this point.
So I think I feel like the Panthers are like people know some of the household names there, right? Like Vincent Trocheck, Mike Hoffman, Jonathan Huberdeau, Alexander Barkov, all these guys, and Bob Borowski, of course. Borowski. No. Burakovsky.
You've killed it,
Bobrovsky.
sir.
Anyway, but I think that one thing that doesn't quite get that much attention is how solid that top line is. Now, I think the top lines that you think about when you think about elite NHL top lines, not even necessarily fantasy perspective, but just like in general, Boston has to be everybody's number one now. Pasta, Marchand, Bergeron is like unbeatable. But then, and then Colorado is the one that everybody's like, ooh, maybe they're better. They're not. But you had McKinnon, Renton, and Landeskog right there as far as just dominant. But I think that people kind of, despite knowing that you have Barkov and Huberdeau who are just amazing, discount Dadonov a little bit, and then as a result, discount the entire line for how strong they are. I would say they would be third if you assume that Tampa's not going to put together Point, Stamkos, and Kucherov. If they do, then like it gets a little bit more murky because that's a tough line to contend with. But I think at least top four in the entire NHL is their offensive prowess on that top line.
I mean,
however,
I think each one of those players is criminally underrated. Huberdeau,
Yeah.
criminally underrated. You have Barkov, also, I think, one of the most underrated elite stars in the league.
he's starting to get there
and
now.
Dadonov, too.
I think the wingers
now,
are more underrated than Barkov is at this point, but
I still think Barkov, for what he is still underrated.
I think that we can finally put your Bob as the second best to rest now.
Hold on.
Especially considering
No.
how Bishop's playing.
There is
but-
still 3/4 of the way through the season, sir. There's a lot of hockey to be
I
played.
wonder how many teams are out of the playoffs already because of Bob.
You know what?
Sorry, everybody, on
I'm in
Gamby's
fourth
behalf.
place with Bob. So you know what? You can still win with
How are you
Bob.
doing in the goalie stats?
I don't want to talk about it. More often than not, he is in the negative, but I survive.
That's not thriving. That's not thriving. Anyway, talk about a little bit about Braden Point again. The sixth take here is I think Braden Point might be the biggest buy low candidate right now.
I think
I
there's
know that
one
you
other
had
one.
you had a bust watch on him. There's actually two other ones. There's Johnny Gaudreau and Taylor Hall, I think.
I think Johnny Gaudreau is the biggest one right now.
Yeah, I think Hall might be. But the thing is, I feel like whatever reason, I've been hearing a lot of trade talk revolving around Braden Point for like pretty cheap, in my opinion. Somebody that recently asked, this is closer than I thought it was originally, but a first and Kadri for Point, and the first was it was a keep 5. So like that, if it was anything more than a keep 5, that's like an insta lock trade. I don't care how Kadri's doing. Even in a keep 5, it's probably
I'd take that in a heartbeat in a keep 5.
It's probably still a go. It's just a matter of you got to realize you're essentially missing a 6th round pick next season, and you hope you win. The guys forward keepers, it was only keep 3 forwards were Aho, Pedersen, and Eichel. So it's kind of hard to figure out if Point's going to pop any of those out of there. Maybe Pedersen, but
yeah, I mean, we look at every single comment that comes through on YouTube, on Twitter, and everything, and like we always see what trades are out there, right? And we use a lot of what you guys tell us, or you guys ask us to judge kind of what the market is like. And on top of that, we obviously take a look at trends and things like that in Twitter. But some of the trades that I've seen for Braden Point, for Johnny Gaudreau, for Blake Wheeler, for some of these guys that have such high ceilings, are being sold way too low. I think people tend to forget about ceilings a lot. And that's what you see with guys like Taylor Hall, Johnny Gaudreau, and Braden Point is like, yes, they're struggling, but no matter who you trade for, the ceiling is just never, ever going to be the same. And we'll talk about the Calgary Flames in a bit because I have them as one of my talking points for the 10 takes, but they're underachieving like crazy, and Johnny Gaudreau is as well. His shooting percentage is super, super low, and it's low over the season, but it's even lower over the last 30 days. And you see the same thing with like the Blake Wheelers of the world, the Phil Kessels, where, they had good starts to the season, and it's in these last 30 days or so that they've really underachieved. But when you look at the path to if they can get to elite status it's still there. It's not exactly easy, but the path is absolutely there. And if there's even a path to that eliteness, it's tough to justify selling, especially if you have a good team. I say this on a lot of bust watches, but if you have a good team, you can take that risk. I mean, you're already at the top of the league with that risk on your team, and they've already been doing nothing. There's no point in selling low. I'd rather have the ceiling of that player later on and in the playoffs than not. So now after that whole thing, let's get into my next take here, which has to do with hits, and specifically Ryan Reeves. He has gone beast mode. 12 hits against the Sharks, although I will say he disappointed me, and he disappointed you. He really let us down.
Me so much.
He didn't punch anybody.
No punching. In a game that there should have been much punching.
No. The fans punched Evander Kane by chanting, what was it? Pay your
I actually didn't hear this chant. Oh,
you didn't hear this?
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so the fans in Vegas punched Evander Kane in the face, but nobody else. So that was disappointing. I would have liked Ryan Reeves to get some fights, but the 12 hits this game and then 7 hits the last game, he's genuinely getting into the territory where you could add him and not really need any other hitters. Clefbaum is that for blocks, where you can have Clefbaum and he alone can win you most weeks. Reeves is the same way. Reeves alone can win you most weeks on hits right now with the way he's been playing. You almost want to find a room for him because he's hitting so much and no one else does that. So he's an interesting player, and if he's available in your banger league and you count hits, in standard leagues, you count hits as standard cats. Ryan Reeves is super, super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of guys that hit sometimes, Jamie Benn. Jamie Benn is playing games again. He's playing hockey.
Oh boy. The week of Jamie Benn. We had a week of Jamie Benn last year too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in his last 4 games, he shot 6, 5, 4, and 3 times. So if you extrapolate that going forward, he should shoot 7 in his next game and then 8 and so on. And then by the end of the season, he'll be shooting 60 plus times a game.
Math is fun.
That's how that works. It's simple math. Simple math. So, in playoffs, when he's shooting 55 times a game, you pretty much win just by sheer volume. No, but seriously, I do like that he's shooting again. That was the biggest concern for me watching Ben's play besides the ice time dip was the lack of shot production. It was always kind of a cornerstone for him. He wasn't the biggest volume shooter in the world, but he would get 3 a game or so. And we saw that really fall off. It's good to see it back. I don't know how long this sticks around, but whatever's going on in Dallas lately, it seems to be good for everybody. I don't know what's changed, but yeah, it's good to see Ben producing. I'd be happy to have him, but it's still weird to figure out what his actual value is at this point.
I still don't think I'd trade for him. I think he's, a 65, 60 ceiling guy. Which
I'm
guess,
cool with him. Yeah, if he's going to put the peripherals up, I'm fine with him being 65 points.
Yeah, if he puts the peripherals up, sure.
Yeah.
I think that the peripherals are a very questionable thing if they continue. This is such a weird week for him. He's shooting at 25%. On ice shooting was 25, or on ice shooting I think was 22%. His own shooting percentage was 25% over the last week. So a little.
Yeah, but if you look at anything over a week's time, it's going to look weird.
Exactly. But, still, I'd say that I still can't make any decisions on Ben just looking at this week. Not ready enough to do that. Okay, so my last one here, like I said, I was going to touch on the Flames. So it's time to talk about them for a brief second here. They've lost 5 in a row. But let me tell you a quick story about the Calgary Flames. Last year, they were 3rd best at team shooting percentage. They had a 10.9 shooting percentage at all strengths. This season, they are dead last when it comes to shooting percentage, only 7.6. Now, we had told you that early in the preseason that we expected all the Flames to regress a little bit. Gaudreau was not going to get 99. Monahan was going to put up insane numbers. And a lot of that was just simply everybody on the team pretty much, especially all the people who got big numbers, Giordano, Gaudreau, Monahan, everyone had high shooting percentages. They were all a little over-indexed. And the whole team, as I just showed you, 3rd best, was a little over-indexed, was benefiting a lot of people. And when you look at a guy like Gaudreau, his shooting percentage over the season, like I said, is low. Over the last 30 days, it's even lower. And it's the same thing when you take a look at Giordano and everybody else. Right now, they just have a lot of trouble putting the puck in the back of the net. And I think they have all the talent in the world to not do that. And I think they could put it in the back of the net. And so I think the Flames are a team right now that probably is my pick for the most unsustainably low of any team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's weird rubber banding from them to go from so ridiculously over the top to underproducing, but it happens, I guess. All right, my last bit here. I assumed we were going to get flooded with Morgan Frost questions after scoring that filthy goal in his first NHL game and then adding 2 more points, but really hasn't happened that much. And the funny thing is, I thought for sure when they did come that I was just gonna be like, no, I'm not listening. No, blah blah blah. Who cares? He's played like 2 games, but I looked into it a little bit, and he's actually more interesting than I was originally gonna let on. Now, Daily Faceoff, at least last time I checked, was still showing him as not playing on the power play, but in his last game he played top power play, and he's top line, and he's playing about 16 minutes a game as far as his last game goes. So he played his first game 14 minutes, then he played 16 minutes, which is a good amount of time for a rookie, on the top line with Giroux and Konechny, and on top power play. I like that, honestly. I like that. He shot 3 times a game, so he's not afraid to actually shoot. He's worth a flyer in even like 12-person leagues, maybe even 10, depending on who you're dropping. Next week, as we mentioned, is tough from a schedule perspective, but I'm going to try to look and see if I can acquire him in a couple of leagues if I have room and I think I can survive with maybe having to bench him for the first few games.
So you're saying a flyer is worth a flyer?
Yeah.
Gotcha. There you go. Finally, anytime I can catch Brandon in a pun, I do it.
I didn't
so proud.
Make the pun, though.
So proud. I'm gonna let that sink in that Brandon used that pun, and I'm gonna take us right.
I didn't.
No. You did. You gotta just admit it. It's okay. Let the pun consume you.
Let's move on forever.
Let's move on to the weekend pickup suggestions and start with the matchups of the weekend. Looking at just Saturday and Sunday in this situation because we missed Friday. Teams with good matchups to me are Arizona, who play the Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. Carolina plays the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings. A lot of opportunities for goals there. The Montreal Canadiens play the New York Rangers, the worst team in hockey. I don't even think that's a question. I know they've won some games, but in my opinion, they are absolutely the worst team in hockey. Teams with bad matchups will be the worst team in hockey, who plays the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens.
No, they already played the
And
Senators technically.
oh, they already played the Senators. My bad. So it's only Montreal, one of the harder teams in the league to play against at the moment. And
And
obviously
they gotta
no
play them
teams.
tired too.
Yeah, and then teams that play off nights are
And
going
on the
to
road.
yeah, it's not pretty. That's going to be a hard game for the New York Rangers. And then teams that play Sunday. So usually we'd say both off nights, but because we're releasing the Saturday this time, the teams that play Sunday are going to be Arizona, Buffalo, Carolina, Detroit, Edmonton, and Florida. And those are the people you're going to want to be able to target this weekend. And we have a few suggestions from those teams. So I'll start with my first one here. And a Detroit player who plays Sunday, left wing, right wing, 17% owned, Robbie Fabry. I'm actually shocked he hasn't exploded in ownership percentage when we saw guys like Nick Schmaltz explode. We've seen guys like Philip Deneau explode and all that. Like the fact that Fabry, with 8 points in 7 games now, with a good power play deployment, is not higher is actually really surprising to me. And he's one of those guys that you can pick up for Sunday, but could actually turn into a long-term hold.
People only want unsustainable players to get 3 assists in a game.
Yeah, they also want, they want to touch nice things, and Detroit is not a nice thing, unfortunately.
So most of my suggestions when we originally wrote this are gone now, but I think the only goalie, okay, there's 2 goalies. If Ronta's available, then Ronta's a good option, assuming he plays. But beyond that, I think the best option this weekend is probably going to be James Reimer, 5% owned against a sludge match against Detroit. Detroit being the least scoring team in the league. So, I mean, Reimer's never going to, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll sparkle. Usually doesn't sparkle. But it's as good a matchup as you can ask for. And if you need that extra start on Sunday, there's not going to be a ton of options. So I do like Reimer for that.
My next one is going to be on Arizona. Jacob Chikrin, defenseman, 12% owned. I would get him as a banger kind of floor guy, getting good blocks, decent shots at times. And he does get, points occasionally. So I'd say in this situation, like he has a good shot at points, but not necessarily the best. And especially because of his schedule with the Kings and Edmonton, you might have a defenseman option on Saturday. You might. For example, if you've been streaming a defenseman, you may want to stream in a defenseman for Saturday, Sunday instead of play the defenseman you've had. For example, I don't know, just giving you an example. You picked up Calvin DeHaan, for example, and you want to instead have Jacob Chikrin for 2 nights, then you could do that. So Jacob Chikrin to me is a good option, a decent floor if you're in a peripherals league with an opportunity for points.
Yeah, I got one more. Andreas Athanasiou, who seems to always be on this list. Let me see what I think his deployment is left wing, right wing, but I didn't put him on the list because I didn't think I was going to mention him. He's only 18% owned, which is kind of interesting considering he's actually got all. He's got center, left wing, right wing. How about that? He's point per game over his last 12 games or something. So pretty decent, which is weird considering this is after coming off of top power play, so he's not really getting much in the way of power play points, but he's shooting a lot, and I guess he's connecting with Fabry to some extent. So with triple eligibility, 18% owned, and a good matchup, or at least a reasonable matchup, because it's probably going to be Reimer. I like Athanasiou as an ad.
My last person here is actually going to be an entire team. That's going to be Montreal. If you're up in a matchup and you feel pretty confident you're going to win, you should target Montreal players for next week now and get them before anybody else and use your ads for this week. They have the best schedule
literally
next week.
Add them on Saturday, even if you're benching them, just to take them before
exactly.
the people do.
If you're going to be benching them anyways and you have people you drop for next week, I'd just do it now. Montreal next week has the best schedule, and it's not even close. I think Boston also has a pretty good schedule, but Montreal, to me, has absolutely the best schedule. They have 3 off nights, so if you can pick up some of the hot players out there, Tatar, Armia, Deneau, you could also get on defense if someone's out. I don't know who actually would be relevant on defense out there. Chiro has been interesting for deep leagues. There's a few options on Montreal for next week, but this note, Chiro?
Who's that?
Defenseman. Ben Chiro.
Is his name not Chirot? I could have sworn.
Was it? That's why I call him Chariot. I usually call him Chariot. Okay, so before I continue here, I was corrected that his name is not actually churro, like the Mexican delicacy. It's actually churrat.
Yeah, churrat.
It's churrat, not churro. I would like
and
it
if
to
it's
be
not,
churro.
this is an announcer problem, and blame the NHL.
Yeah. So Chirot is a good option in really deep leagues. I'm glad I didn't say his name wrong, even though I kind of want to keep calling him Churro now.
Don't do that.
But he's a decent option. So there you go. That is the weekend preview. Again, sorry it's late. If you're listening to this in the morning, be sure to join into our Sit Start Saturday stream at 11:30 Eastern. Also pay attention with the heavy week that's coming up. We've been doing live streams on really heavy slates right before game starts, and we'll be doing that again this next week. So pay attention for that. Thank you for listening so much. We really appreciate all the love and everything we've been getting recently. Be sure to leave a review if you love the podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.